An absolutely beautiful performance there. Well, everybody, I do hope that you enjoyed your short break and were able to spend a last few moments checking out everything else that this summit has to offer, especially outside in the expo and the breakout sessions, as well as catching up with other guests. So, you know, we love words here, but maybe more than words, we love numbers. And I have some excellent numbers to share with you because we've literally got these just fresh into us. I want to tell you that we've had more than 20,000 participants here over the last 3 days. We've got over 3 million viewers on the live stream from 130 countries and more than 100 announcements and signed MOUs, which to me just proves the power and the reach of this brilliant event. And although a huge amount of hard work has gone into it, none of it would be possible without all of you. So I really think that we all deserve a huge hand for that. Thank you so much. And now on with our afternoon sessions. So in today's changing educational landscape, personalized learning has become more essential than ever. And one of the key drivers of personalized learning is mentorship, where, as we know, guidance, encouragement, and tailored advice meet the individual needs of students in our world. So without further ado, let's take a further look at how generative AI can elevate personalized mentorship. Please welcome Professor George Turkia, Research Professor, King Abdullah University of Science and Technology, and his panel.
Right. Welcome, everyone. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. It's a pleasure to be here. You know, the background of this panel is sort of the current way we deliver education, whether in schools or colleges. You know, by and large, this is sort of the factory model, where we put 30, 50, 100 students in a classroom and we talk to them and present information, you know, with few variants and innovations. But by and large, we have this factory model, which is scalable and cost efficient, and that's wonderful. However, this model tends to leave some students behind. And you know, it wasn't always like this. You know, earlier in the history, we had the more sort of Socratic model of education, where there is a Socrates, there is a tutor, who individualizes the instruction, who encourages dialogue, who gets the students to think for themselves. They don't view themselves as giving answers, but rather encouraging students to figure out where the answers can be. So the premise here is, can generative AI bring back this Socratic model to everyone? Can every student have their own Socrates helping them to develop and to think and to learn at their pace with their own capabilities? And to help us sort out things in this quickly emerging landscape are 4 distinguished panelists that I'd like to introduce. On my right here is Dr. Bridger Ammar. He's the CEO of Holistic Intelligence for Global Good. Dr. Ammar is an educator, engineer, author, scientist, and most recently, entrepreneur. He's been working in AI for a long time. He was a lead developer in the Semantic Scholar project, and he's most recently been a senior scientist at Google. On my right is Dr. Hiba El-Jibreen, who is now the Innovation Enhancement General Manager at RDIA, the Research and Development Innovation Authority in the Kingdom. Prior to that, she was Director of Research and Innovation at STC in the Kingdom, and she was also professor at KSU, where she was also the director of the AI Center for Advanced Studies. So she brings with her the perspective from academia, from industry, and now from government to this beautiful discussion. On my left is Dr. Tony Feghali, who is a business coach working with startup founders and SME leaders in early stage idea development. He's taught at the American University in Beirut before, and he brings to us this perspective from both the academic side and actually the business side and the early incubation side. And on the left is our Mr. Ashraf Hamad, our distinguished speaker here. He's the CEO of Numu Education Center, a leader in education technology. He's been working with the government and the private sector to promote the implementation of various educational technologies and transformative technologies in schools. He's a technology advisor at the Dahran Ahliya schools and has been working with Arabic language technologies in those schools. So with that, maybe perhaps I should start by asking Dr. Ammar, maybe tell us a little bit what you view the role of sort of generative AI in education.
Such an easy question to answer, thank you. No, it's very complex, right? So one of the things I would like to do when I am faced with a complex problem as a computer scientist, I apply some of the algorithms that tend to work really well, like divide and conquer. So we can divide this question into 3 dimensions. So of course there are more dimensions, but these are the ones I'd like to invite the audience to close your eyes if you want, and imagine yourself going into a 3D space. One dimension, maybe the vertical dimension, is level of education, maybe kindergarten, elementary, and all the way to a high, actually lifelong learning. So that's one dimension. The other dimension is what aspect of education are we talking about? Is it the content, or is it the delivery, or is it the assessment, or is it something else? And a third aspect, a third dimension is who is it are we talking about? Whose problem are we talking about now? Is it the educator problem, or is it the student problem, or is it the parent problem? And all of them are interesting, all of them are important, but they are different questions to answer. And at the end of the day, when you talk about generative AI or any other technology, I'd like to be driven by the problem we're trying to solve, not, I don't like to think of it as like a hammer, but I'd like to, we have a hammer. The generative AI is a hammer, but we're not going to go around looking for nails. I'd rather understand the problem really well, dig into a specific room, let's say in this 3D space. So for example, the intersection as an educator who cares about teaching higher education and focused very much on credibility of content. That's something I really care about. How can generative AI help us there? Both help the students consume credible sources, but also produce credible content.
Thank you for identifying these multiple facets of the problem. You're absolutely right. Dr. Hiba, perhaps also your perspective on what the impact of this technology and its capabilities, how do you view that?
Yes, thank you very much. Probably I will be talking about it from my story, I would say. In around 2021, we were working on the Gulf Observatory for AI in Education. At that time, although there was a lot of interest in AI education, however, we couldn't find really much of tools and use cases, especially in Middle East. And I can see in the past 2 years or so, there have been a lot of advancements locally, internationally, especially with ChatGPT and all these kind of developments. And this had a high impact on all levels, whether in the institution, the teacher, the students, all kind of levels. And for some reason, at least from my experience, I noticed that it's most of the developments when it comes to specialized education and AI in education was in mathematics and language. And we can see one use case, for example, is Duolingo tools. Coursera is also using AI as an advisor. However, it's bigger than that. It can be used in a lot of things, whether it's in education or even helping students as a mentor and advisor. One use case, for example, in University of Murcia, where they use it in Spain, they use a chatbot called Lulu, and they were able actually to serve more than 4,000 students in 1 year with a good accuracy. But of course, with these developments comes great responsibilities. That's why now in my current positions we're looking into how can we find the right balance between developments of all kind of emerging tech, whether it's AI or other emerging techs, without really killing innovation, because that's really a critical balance that we need to find. it's not only about the policy, but also about development, the capability and understanding of using these and developing these technologies.
Thank you. Yeah, but I'll remember that. With great technology comes great responsibility. Indeed, it is our collective responsibility to see how we can develop this further. Dr. Feghali, from your experience in both academia and working with leaders in the business sector, do you have examples of how this technology can be? What is its role? How has it impacted things?
If you'd allow me just to give a little perspective, let me just zoom back a little bit. Like a good student, Professor George asked me to come and sit on the panel with the organizers, thank you. I brought a show and tell. This is a book. This is Marvin Minsky, The Society of Mind. This book I took with me when I was a grad student 36 years ago and went and met for a day with Marvin, Professor Minsky. We flipped through this book. He's one of the fathers of AI, along with John McCarthy, Herb Simon, Alan Newell. It was a very interesting day that day for me. And then I spent another day with Seymour Papert, who created Mindstorms and the logo language with Lego, the basic of AI in education, 36 years ago. And then I became a prof and attempted to teach AI at the American University of Beirut, taught it for 2 years, and then found out that it was all theory, and the result was we have to wait for hardware. Hardware is here, technology is here, and we're going through a cycle now, just like the cycle of when calculators were introduced in the classroom, and it was, should they use the calculator or not? Or should they be dividing by hand and adding by hand, one? And then take it 10, 15 years later, 20 years later, the computer was introduced. And remember when we taught computers? We used to teach computers, right? Listen, that too shall pass. I'm getting to the end of it. That too shall pass. Let's enjoy the ride. Let's continue to solve the problem, what students should do or not do, what consultants should do in the lifelong learning in their own businesses, and what we all should do, whether it's ChatGPT, Copilot, Claude, or whatever. My take on this is fun, this is exciting, this is like when I got my first calculator and started punching on it. It's a new toy, let's have fun. Yeah.
Thank you. I think, yes, the words to remember. Technology should not let us forget the fundamentals. Thank you. Dr. Ashraf, you've been working with schools and with governments. What's your perspective on this? Do you have case studies? What's the big role of this technology?
Definitely. I would like to take this maybe the perspective of segmentation. I mean, there's maybe the focus here on K-12, and there's higher ed, and then maybe lifelong learners. In particular, when it comes to schools and K-12 programs, there's so many different expectations, adaptations, upskilling, professional development constraints in the way of adapting personalized learning or AI in particular. So we always stress that the best approach to have the most outcome out of involved with this technology is to ensure that all stakeholders are on board. So the system of believing that the school itself is capable of actually doing something with this technology is mandatory, is something that we have as a school environment, as a school community, figure out, are we ready? Do we have the infrastructure? Do we have the capacity? What is it? How much of a gap between adapting the AI and implementing the first step that is, calling this company or calling this private sector service provider to come in and join the team? These challenges need to be addressed at the forefront, and we have seen a lot of the results, especially in a Saudi context. I mean, we're operating one of the schools and in the Eastern Province, Dhahran Hadia schools, and we have adapted technologies related to artificial intelligence. And we've seen that when we were so excited in the beginning, and we rushed as an IT enthusiast and started building a small solution here and there, we started getting riots, and we started getting disappointed people talking about, well, how come this department is getting it and I'm not getting it? Why are you training in English? How about the Arabic language? So internally as a leader team, we had to step back, analyze the requirements, and figure out why is it that we want to use AI inside the classroom? Is it because, is it trend? Is it because school B is using it? Do we have the ability to actually have tangible results inside, and not to mention the biggest stakeholders, the parents, they will come. My son is already, my daughter have like 20 hours worth of homework, and you're trying to add this new tools to help close the gap when it comes to the AI spectrum. So it is an ecosystem that needs to exist prior to the implementation stage, for sure.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that assessment perspective. Actually, it is important. We cannot forget about this. All right, Dr. Hiba, if I may turn to you and ask a question that I think is on a lot of people's minds, is how close are we? How close are we to having AI mentors that can actually really help students, or how can they work with their existing structures?
So I will be talking about the perception of what's mentor is. It's different on your perception. If your perception on AI mentors as being just assistive tool, where it can advise you on, for example, what kind of courses to select, what's kind of, for example, track to go to, depending on your progress and etc., we really advance on that in that area. But if you're talking about a real mentor, AI mentor that have the, I would say, the social aspect of mentorship, we're still far away, because mentorship also have, it has to have some kind of social intelligence. We need to be aware of the current mindset and mind state of the students that we're talking to, their emotions. It's all impact, even humans, us a human, not all of us would be a good mentors. It has to have this kind of unique skill, I would say, in that regard, especially if we're talking about mentorship in Saudi context or even Middle East context, that language is Arabic, is still, I would say, not captured enough and captured well, because we have a lot of models that is trained based on translated language. So the origin is English or other languages that is translated in Arabic, although like the language is there, but the culture and the context is missing. So I would say we still have a lot of work to do, and I can see there's a lot of developments with leadership of Sadaya and other research centers and university in that regard.
I'd like to counter, yes. Because I agree with you to some degree, but also, who are we to decide if it's there or not? The students, at the end of the day, are gonna do whatever they want to do at home. My daughter, I cannot stop her from using, like even 2 years ago, she was using Google Assistant for things that she could have asked me, right? And she does think of it as some kind of authority, despite my best efforts to dissuade her from doing that. But at the end of the day, it is a mentor that is out there, that is talking to our children, our students at all levels, and we may or may not agree with the mentorship that it's providing, but it's there.
Yeah, I totally agree. Maybe one thing to be careful of, which I usually see it forgotten, is that we're always worried about the risk of AI, as in privacy and risk and security and these kind of things. However, up until now, AI still hallucinates, and sometimes it puts hallucination thing, something that is wrong as fact. And even if students or our children is using it, we need to upskill them and let them aware of the risk of using these kind of tools.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, in some ways, I sort of agree that we're far away from being sort of having this Socratic tutor that can really understand students well enough and help them emotionally. But, also, Dr. Bridger, it's true that even ChatGPT, a basic chatbot, is sort of doing some tutoring at some level. But perhaps I can pick off that and ask you, Dr. Bridger, sort of, there is this issue that everybody's struggling with, is if we go through this personalized tutoring down that road, what happens to our sort of curricula and educational standards and the standardized things we usually expect from students? Sort of, how can we balance these things?
I mean, it's a great question. It's a very hard question to answer, but also, in my opinion, for a very long time, the education as a sector has been overregulated. And in my mind, the neurodiversity and just the different life experiences that students have require us to allow for different approaches, different methods, different lessons for different students, in order for the education to be effective. And I know so many students who sit in the classroom bored because they have already seen this before, they know it. We don't want to teach them the same thing. So one of my favorite approaches in early childhood education is Montessori education, where it's very personalized. How can we scale that? It's a question that I'm generally interested in, and I've been thinking about taking some of the elements, like the characteristics of the Montessori education, and see how can we incorporate it in a very specific context, for example, a particular course. And you know, I love Socratic method. Ronnie Rosenfeld, who taught me at Carnegie Mellon University, introduced the concept of doing Socratic method in scale. Like he was teaching a 200-person machine learning course, and he did Socratic learning. It's incredible to see him do it. Not everybody's able to do it. And it's about, you know, trying to kind of like bring everybody in person to impersonate the person who's asking the question or having the conversation. But now with generative AI, we definitely have more of a chance to achieve this. So I guess to bring this back to your question, how can this be like, what is the middle ground between standardization and personalization? I think Ashraf actually has a great solution, which we discussed briefly before. And I'd like to pass it along to you, because I feel like doing it at the school level might be the right solution, but I don't know.
Well, you clearly are on one side of that debate. I think Dr. Ashraf may well be on the other side of that debate.
The standardization is a question that no one is capable of answering fully, because it requires the blessing of the decision makers, and it requires the stakeholder involvement, and it's an approach that has been going for hundreds of years. I mean, AI is not going to create a disruption in that mechanism or that realm yet. I feel this is more of a strategic framework for countrywide initiatives. You have to be able to manage what sort of information is transcendent to the students. What about their identity? What about their language? What about their belief system? What about the core fundamental issues related to the social studies that we want? The history. This is the biggest, I mean, the history is written from the perspective of, as we say, the winner. So what about the history that you want to teach? Do you want to trust that to the AI itself? That's why having standards is a fundamental approach, and no government official will sign off in having an AI-controlled curriculum going freely. Like, I know, like, you would like to see that, because that would bring in about a lot more free initiatives and a lot more adaptation to the disruptive tool. However, reality dictates that we have to be in charge, still be in charge, until we get to a safe zone where these LLMs are managed in a closed environment without having any influence from an outside perspective. And I think the technology is here to create that. So when we get to that stage, I think curriculum will be somehow automated to a level where you like.
Yeah, I love these two sides of the debate. They're clearly, very different views, whether we should personalize or we should standardize, and these are not easy answers. Did you have an intervention?
Since I'm in the middle. Okay, so if I understand, gentlemen, you both gentlemen correctly, yes, there are challenges. We would hope for more flexibility. Okay, if we look at it, one, we have the system, the technology. And that's flying with or without us, right? With us. Second, you have the structure. And that structure could be decision makers and what have you. Assuming the decision is made, and we know the technology is fast, we need to implement it. Now, who implements in an education environment? Usually the administrators and the teaching body. And the teaching body are bodies like us. Some of us are more resistant, others are more open. In order to move a whole teaching body from one point to the other, it takes a generation sometimes, because they're there. Teachers, God bless them, we cannot get rid of them for whatever reason. Some of them are willing to change, some of them are not willing to evolve and change. So we have that major block there, which is an in my opinion, a problem when it gets to that angle. Now, implementing, what would be really, really good if the decision makers will move from, and I'm going to talk AI terms and computer language terms here, from algorithms to heuristics. From, if this happens, this is what's going to happen, to heuristics. How about we go in that direction? So if the decision makers will make a shift into heuristics, then I think we can move slightly faster than otherwise.
Can I extend an olive branch
Yeah.
to that argument?
Yeah, please continue. And I do want you to also follow up, because you're working with schools and you're working with governments and you're implementing these things. What do you see as sort of practical impediments to implementing this?
And technology enthusiasts tend to neglect key components of how we come about things because they want to just rush to the results, and it's exciting. These shortcuts, sometimes we lose track of how the standards are actually made. There's several iterations and steps and body and stakeholders, from governments to decision makers to curriculum experts, including parents. Now, if we say AI is going to generate all of that, have we considered all the stakeholders? Did we actually create an LLM that represents the parents or an LLM that represents the decision makers? We can figure out a way to get to that middle ground, but we need to consider the process as a wholesome instead of just focusing on how this shortcut creation mechanism is going to take place.
May I comment on this? Okay, so standardization is beautiful because it gives us a mechanism to assess how different implementations are, are good. Like, as you said, like heuristics, I'd like to think of them as more of a hypothesis and see the results of it in light of the standardization. At the same time, the movement, like the upgrades and improvements in the standardization has been slow, which is typical. Like anything that's top down tends to be slow. The problem with this is that we have, basically we're crippling ourselves by enforcing rules that were made in a time when people had books to read as the primary source of information. Now, computers are everywhere. They're in the pockets of the students. They're not gonna care about the standards. They are gonna do, the actual implementation is distributed. It's not only the educators, it's not only the government, it's the students are there, the parents are there, and we're all implementing this together. And if we don't acknowledge that this is a distributed decision-making framework, then we're fooling ourselves.
I'm actually interested in this discussion because I think it's also related to the scalability. So our current state is not scalable enough, from what I understand from your side. So I'm interested in that perspective.
Yep, absolutely. Yes. If we want to scale these things up, we have to sort out exactly what part of the curricula are more flexible than others. And this is a discussion. I mean, it's a whole ecosystem, and everybody has to get involved. Dr. Tony, perhaps I could ask you if you could tell us, what is immediate future trend in this area, where things are going? I mean, part of implementing any technology is also cultural. It has to be integrated properly in the culture of the schools and the institutions. Where do you see this? Do you see any difficulties in doing such integrations?
Absolutely. I think one of the main issues that I personally care about is culture. I protect my culture, right? Yes, we are one big village now, international global village, true, but I like to go to a city and feel that I am part of that city and it has hundreds of years back or however long it is. I go to a country, I go to a hayy, to a neighborhood, right? How can we allow or build or feed those LLMs or AGI or whatever is coming up and keep our identity, the nice twist, right? So that our kids, when they're learning and they were seeking help, that help comes with a local flavor. I think that will take more time, I think, than the technical stuff only, pure technical stuff. And my other thing, which would be, I think we have like a minute. Oh, please, go ahead. You want?
No, I was going to say we've succeeded when we've done that, when we have really integrated the technology so transparently and seamlessly that, we still feel everything around us and all the cultural footprint of the things we know. We know we've succeeded. That integration is exciting. Yeah, perhaps we should maybe open.
I just want to add one more to Tony's. Arabic. We need more Arabic developers, and I mean, Sadaya, mashallah, they are doing great. They're developing their own model. Yep. I think this is a strategic investment for the nation and for the Arab world as well. But we need more. We need the private sector involvement. We need more focus on that. I mean, everything is being done in English and other languages. Yep. So if you want to really hold true to that identity issue, we need more Arabic enthusiasts. I mean, all these university students, we need you. We need your support. We need you to come in and invest that mindset to changing the narrative and having, I mean, we have to have it present at one point.
Absolutely. In fact, I mean, this is how I understood the comment. Yes, absolutely. Arabic is sort of what we are a little bit missing in this.
حتى أكتر, يعني yesterday, either earlier today or yesterday, we were talking about modern standard Arabic, right? And let's throw in dialect كمان.
Dialect.
من وين جاي؟ من بيروت، من النجد، من wherever it is, hello, it's authentic. The more authentic we get, the more.
I mean, there is no question, you're right. There's no question that a good tutor must converse in the dialect of the students they're talking to. I mean, this is, if they really want to reach them at an emotional level, it has to be that. But, we have a bit of time, perhaps open the floor. If there are no questions, I think we're out of time. All right, thank you very much. Thank you for all the panelists. Thank you for the audience. Appreciate it.